Welcome to Organic News with Cat Waters, revealing the truths behind the conspiracy. Every Tuesday from 6 to 8 Eastern.
Okay, thank you for joining us on this Tuesday, September the 15th. Organic News here on Awake Radio, and I have Thomas Kiely with me, who is an alternative media activist who in 2002, along with his partner Lenny Charles, founded the INN World Report, an alternative daily news and information television program broadcast nationally on the Dish Network satellite system's free speech TV channel. In addition to his interest in creating a viable alternative media, Tom has spent many years studying philosophy and also works in computer programming. During the Vietnam era, Tom served as the U.S. Army Signal Corp in Berlin, Germany, where he says he got a first-hand view of what a government that lied to its people through a rubber stamp cheering committee looks like. And you also spoke and moderated some of the Declassify the Truth symposium, hr14.org, on Saturday in New York City. Right, Tom?
Yeah, Kat. We at INN we typically put on a symposium every year marking the anniversary of the September 11th attacks, and usually Les Jameson, New York City 9/11 activist, helps us do that. This year it was mostly Les's effort, but that carries on a tradition that we do usually on the weekend near 9/11, and so that's what we were up to this weekend. That's where you and I had a good chance to meet.
Yeah, so thanks for joining me on Awake Radio today. And so first, let's talk about the symposium that we had on Saturday. Talk a little bit about HR14, if you would.
Sure. INN, when we first got started, it was actually 2001 in Lower Manhattan in Tribeca, only about a half a mile north of Ground Zero, almost directly north of Ground Zero. So we had already gotten formed as an alternative media group in early 2000 in response to the theft of the 2000 election, and we figured that the best thing we could do to try to help the country was to put media out, because the corporate media was cheerleading the theft of the election. And so we got together and we had an opportunity to put a television show onto Dish Network, and we started putting it together. And then the attacks came, and it set us back almost a year. But they also affected us rather profoundly. I myself was working in the World Trade Center area, the financial district, I should say, as a programmer of financial software, some bond trading software. And several of my clients were either directly in the World Trade Center complex or near it, across the street, and then throughout the financial district. And one of them was Cantor Fitzgerald, which was my client, and I had been in charge of upgrading our software program there for about 1 year prior to the attacks. And we just finished in August, so fortunately I wasn't there that morning. But the last day I was there was on September the 5th. So between that and the fact that INN studios were so close to Ground Zero, the attacks were a very immediate event for us. I myself was out on the street when the towers came down, the first tower, and I almost got killed. So put that all together, when you probably remember, Kat, and most of you, it was a terrible attack of shock and awe on everybody. And it take a little while to sort of clear your head, but we began to ask questions about it, and we had our show on the air by then, so we started to broadcast questions about it. So we have a long tradition of asking questions. I think Alex Jones and David Ray Griffin were the first two people that I heard asking serious questions, and we had both of them on INN very early on. So from carrying on from there, we began this tradition of having symposiums. We've had about a half a dozen of them or so now on the anniversaries. And as you may recall earlier, closer to the attacks itself, the the anniversaries in New York were quite a big deal. People would come in from all over the world even. You know, Alex Jones would be down in Times Square with a bullhorn and so forth, and there were sometimes numerous events and film debuts and things like that. And it's gotten, you know, sort of quieter and quieter. Now I think the main event is typically the one put on by Les Jameson and sometimes in coordination with INN, and that's what you saw on Saturday the 12th.
And so this thing called HR 14, though, the declassification of the 28 pages, that's a little bit more recent.
Oh, yes, actually, I'm right. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
It.
That's okay.
It was a big theme. In fact, perhaps the main theme of the symposium this year is the fact that 28 pages out of the report that Bush didn't want to make in the first place. Remember, he didn't think we needed a report on the worst attack on American soil and so forth. You know, he didn't think we needed a report. He was shamed into it by the Jersey girls, the wives in New Jersey who had lost husbands. So they put together this sham report with Philip Zelikow, sort of cognitive dissonance czar. And, you know, he put the conclusions of the report together before the committee even started working on it. And out of that report, 28 important pages got classified. People couldn't see what they were. And even members of Congress can't just view these pages. They have to make an appointment, and then they have to go into a secure room. They have to be searched, make sure they don't have a recording device and all this stuff. And then they got goons looking over their shoulder while they're looking at these 28 pages. And they've been around for a while. And I think Obama maybe even promised to declassify them. Of course, that's never happened.
Yeah.
But for the Congress people that have seen these pages and the senators that have seen them, they say that it's a real game changer in your understanding of 9/11, at least from the official point of view. And they are not allowed to talk about it. I don't know why. They should just stand up and talk, I think. But they're not allowed to, and they're too chicken to say anything. But they do drop hints, and the hints are along the lines that the report details involvement by foreign governments, and the implication is Saudi Arabia, but it's not a single foreign government. They mention the word governments in the plural, but we assume that the largest, or the biggest implication goes to Saudi Arabia, and there's a lot of other information that supports the notion that certain Saudi princes and their wives were supporting the patsies, you know, that were in the country learning how to fly and that sort of thing. So what's happening now is there's a movement to get those 28 pages declassified, and there's actually a resolution in the Congress, HR 14, House Resolution 14. There's also one in the Senate, and they've got I think over 10 co-sponsors from both parties. This is very important, Kat. This is a transpartisan effort. You know, that at INN we don't even use the term bipartisan. We like to use the term transpartisan. There are Republicans. I think Walter Jones is one of the leading Republicans on this now. Do you remember who Walter Jones was? He got famous during he's the guy that coined the term freedom fries. He wanted to change the name of French fries to freedom fries because he was mad at the French for not backing us enough in the Middle East.
Okay. Right. I mean, he's one of the pushers of all of this.
He is, but, you know, he seems like a real stand-up guy because, as I understand it, they were using the term old Europe and, the United States is going to lead the way now and the coalition, and people were foot-dragging in Europe, and Walter Jones, I don't think he liked it, and he was mad at the French, and he had a resolution to change the name of French fries in the House cafeteria to freedom fries. But I think, if my recollection serves me properly, somewhere along the line he realized the big mistake we made by going into Iraq, and I think he apologized for that. So that's a stand-up person, especially in the form of a congressman. So Walter Jones, one of the leading advocates to get this declassified, but there are Democratic Congress people as well. And I think it's up to the American people at this point to get their congressperson to get in there and read these pages, because everyone who's read them says at least two things about them. Number one, that these are game changers in your understanding of what happened on 9/11. And number two, they can't see any good reason why they should remain classified. They are embarrassing to friends of the Bush family, like the Saudis, apparently. It's embarrassing to U.S. foreign policy, maybe, but it's nothing that would endanger national security.
Is it right? I mean, so is it only embarrassing, or does it expose anybody for, I don't know, like any kind of involvement or war crimes or?
Well, it sounds like this report details activity by foreign governments, and everyone assumes we're talking about Saudi Arabia, but again, the term is governments, not just one government, that shows how these foreign governments were funding, supporting the alleged hijackers here in this country.
Right.
All right, so that is an act of war if these people were here and they attacked us. And it's an act of treason to be in the government and know about this and hide it from the people. So it's a very delicate situation. Of course, you know, I believe, and I think a lot of other people, you may be included in on this, that these hijackers were just patsies. You know, they were just there to provide a backdrop, a plausibly believable backdrop to the uninitiated as to why the towers came down. I believe that the real psychological operation on September 11th, at least the New York City part of it, was to have people glued to their television sets and watch these iconic symbols of our culture, our society, our finances, our technology, our modernity, all the rest of that, to watch those crumble before people's eyes. I think that was the psychological operation for September 11th. Now, if they would have just called the TV companies and said, get your cameras down to the World Trade Center and something really interesting is going to happen in a half hour, and then press the button and blew up the buildings, then everyone would know it was an inside job, because you have to wire these buildings up and it takes a long time. So they needed some kind of a device, a trick, to show that crumbling, that destruction, you know, your world crumbling in front of you, symbols of it anyway. And so that's what the whole aircraft and the hijackers were. They didn't know how to fly planes. They probably didn't even know they were going to be in on such a big operation. They may have thought they were in on some kind of a training exercise. Who knows? But you know, as far as the real culprits of 9/11, I don't think these 28 pages are going to point to that. But what they will point to, I think, is that part of the operation that was necessary, the maintenance of the patsies and so forth. And, you know, look, I think that's good enough, because if you start pulling on those threads, then it's going to probably lead to more things. And I don't know if the Saudis are going to take the rap for this. They could say, hey, we were just doing what we were told, you know.
So how close is it to getting these 28 pages declassified?
I think it's going to take a lot of push from the American people. And everybody who's listening, I urge you all to go to hr14.org, where you can find out all about this. And we're urging everybody to, I shouldn't say we, because I'm in the media, I'm helping to promote this. I'm not necessarily an organizer of it, but I understand it. And what people need to do is contact their congressperson and ask them if they've read these pages, and then direct them to read those pages. And of course, it's very helpful if you could do that in a group of people. So if you can get a group of your friends who are like-minded, you can set up an appointment, hopefully to see your congressperson, but definitely you ought to be able to go in and see their staff, either here in your home district, or if you want to take a trip to Washington. If you can get a large enough group, you probably can even get to see the congressperson yourself. But what you want to do is urge them to urge the congressperson to take a look at this stuff, and that you're gonna be watching to see if they do that or not.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm hoping that, you know, listeners take you up on that, and, you know, because the people definitely do need to, you know, start taking matters into their own hands, because, you know, the people who we've entrusted, you know, clearly can't be trusted. So I wanted to ask you, in your talk, one of your talks on Saturday, you spoke about the Greek word oligarchy. Can you talk a little bit about what you said?
Sure. By the way, how did you enjoy the symposium, Kat?
No, I mean I was hoping it was going to be a little bit more crowded. I was hoping it was going to be standing room only, but I mean I think we need to have these things more than just once a year.
I think that's a good idea. I was pleased with the crowd. I did not expect more. I mean, it was a good turnout. But you're right. If these become more regular events, I think it might be better. But yeah, I was asked by Les Jameson, the great New York City activist for 9/11 and other causes, to host the event, which I did gladly. And and a lot of the people who were there, we had some great speakers there. Lance DeHaven Smith opened up the speaking. He's a professor at Florida State University in Tallahassee, and he's created a new line of academic inquiry called State Crimes Against Democracy. I think it's a fascinating topic, long overdue. And we had Barbara Honegger there. Barbara who worked with the Pentagon for so many years, and one of the best 9/11 researchers out there. She's got a film, The Smoke Curtain. I think it's called Behind the Smoke Curtain.
Yeah.
All about what happened to the Pentagon. Amazing information there. A lot of great speakers were there, and it was all wrapped up in the end, pretty much by John Perkins, the famous former economic hitman, and he was very eloquent, I thought. And so I had the honor to try to put all this together by making opening comments and introducing many of the panelists. And yes, I gave it some thought, and I thought the best thing I could do to start the conference off was to talk about some of the things that have happened in the last year. Last year, some really important things happened that involved 9/11, and one of them I felt was very important was that these two professors, one from Princeton, one from Northwestern, Benjamin, I don't have his name in front of me right now, but the other one, I think his name is Giles from Princeton, did some academic research by the numbers, it's all verifiable, and they come out with the report that says the United States is being run by an oligarchy now. There's no question about it. It's really not being run as a representative democracy, a republic as we all think it is. The average person has practically zero say in major matters, economic and policy-wise and foreign policy-wise and so forth. And I thought that was a very important thing to bring up because, excuse me, oligarchy, as you point out, it's an ancient term. In fact, I believe it's a constant feature of human society, and it means rule by the few. Yeah. The variation on that, when the few are really wealthy, it's called a plutocracy. But you don't have to be one of the wealthiest people in town or in the country or in the world to be a member of the ruling oligarchy. There's been religious leaders that are involved in that sometimes. Military people are involved who are not necessarily, particularly wealthy, but they're leaders, they're powerful people in their fields. And right now we have a financial oligarchy. Webster Tarpley calls it a financial oligarchy, plutocracy. And these people tell the government what to do. Kat, you probably heard this a lot, where you get complaints from people say, the government's broken. It's not working right. Right. And I tell people, no, the government can't be broken. It's never broken. There's no such thing as a broken government, okay? Government will do what it is told to do, period, the end. Now, it may seem like it's broken to you, but at the same time, it's so-called broken for us, right? For the top 1%, it is working better than it has ever worked in history. These people are making more money now than it's ever been recorded. So for them, it's working just super duper fine, right? It's just not working very well for everybody else, and that's because the government is taking its marching orders from the plutocrats and the oligarchs. It's not taking its orders from the people.
And that didn't happen all of a sudden. I mean, that's a gradual kind of cancer that accumulated over time.
Well, I don't know. I think oligarchy is always there. It's always there. There's always a group of people who want to run the show.
I mean, can I just wanted to sort of interject. I
Sure.
mean, I kind of feel that a lot of people don't. They don't keep themselves informed, you know. Like I mean, I think of it like any other relationship. Like you get out of it what you put into it, and you know, people really kind of need to maintain a relationship with their government and Congress people, and keep a fire under their butt. Like you can't, you know, it's kind of like you can't just like go to sleep after you get married and expect, you know, to stay like blissfully happily ever after. Like you have to work on things, you know, and people don't really. I mean, a lot of people are just not that involved in politics, or they don't like politics.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. If I may, I'll just finish up with the other thing. I'll circle back to that. But oligarchy is always there. There's always oligarchs in the background. You know, typically they're in the background. You know, when they are in the foreground, it's called tyranny or despotism, or you know, there's a tyrant, a dictator. But a lot of times they like to work in the shadows. They don't want people to know they're there because it's hard to fight something that you can't see, that you don't know is there. And that's the way these guys are working right now. The only difference I would say is that from, you know, at different points in history, the oligarchs are stronger or weaker relatively. All right. I think they've been around since the beginning. You could even argue that the founding fathers were oligarchs in a sense. All right. Having a fight with the mother oligarchs back in England. Okay. And they wanted to run their own show over here. But, you know, I think during the Red 30s, they called it, when the oligarchy bit off so much during the Great Depression, they were weaker. They were afraid. They thought they were going to be overthrown. Soviet communism was a new economic alternative in Europe, and they got scared. So they weakened themselves somewhat by creating the middle class, and they coughed up money, and they went for Social Security. They put one of their own, Franklin Roosevelt, in charge of the country to save their own class, right? And that worked. We built up this amazing middle class, became the envy of the world. Everyone wanted to copy it. And now the Soviet system is gone. There's no more competition, and they feel much more secure, I think, right now. So they're taking it all back. They're destroying the American middle class, and their power is growing exponentially to the point now where it can't even be hidden under the rug anymore. You know, so. They're really running the show. They're telling the government what to do. The money is telling the government what to do. And then to your point, they use their incredible amount of wealth. And I saw you with and the Fed t-shirt on, you know, they own the money supply. They own the creation of money. So they make all the money they need. They pay off the colleges. They pay, the colleges are named after the oligarchs, right? You know, Dartmouth University, and all the big foundations that spread the money around, the Ford Foundation, all of this stuff, you know, they spread the money around, and and there's strings attached. The money goes out there to make sure that they stay in power. We can talk about all kind of stuff as long as it doesn't talk about them and how bad they are, like that. And then they also tell the government what to do. So, you know, they pay psychologists. They pay scientists, you know. They pay for global warming science. Yeah. They pay for military development science, right? They block certain sciences. We were supposed to have clean running cars that got a lot of miles per gallon by now, but that's not in their interest. So they influence government to put the brakes on that sort of thing. And one of the things they do is they pay institutions of social control. You know, a very famous group in this regard was the Frankfurt School, started in Germany. I think it was in the 20s. They migrated here to the States after Hitler took over. But these, you got the Tavistock Institute in England. You know, these are institutions set up by wealthy oligarchs to learn how to control people, to control the population. And one of the things they feel is really helpful for them is apathy, and spreading apathy and making people feel like they don't have a say and it's all the same and it doesn't matter. And every time you or anybody else throws their hands up and say, oh, it's all confusing or they're all the same, I'm not going to vote, the oligarchs smile and they pat you on the head and they say, you know, you're right. You know, it's so confusing. Go in the corner and play with your iPod that we gave you, you know. that's the way it goes.
I don't. Yeah, I don't think it's. I mean, to me, it's not confusing. I mean, but like the whole point is that they want to confuse people, but I believe that by just kind of focusing on the simplicity of it, like I think it is kind of like simple. I mean, the people are getting screwed. I mean, that's not complicated, you know.
But how many people? You know, you're an exception, Kat. You're doing this show. You're working hard to inform yourself. How many people do you know work at half the level you work at to inform yourself?
Yeah, but it's
how many people work at a quarter of the level you work
it's
at?
It's kind of costing me too. You know, like that's the problem with that. You know, trying to balance all of this stuff with.
Well, they make it that way. They make it that way.
Exactly. Like, and you know, like that's a really good place to interject the fact that I am actually learning. Like, I am learning that the hard way by. You know, because I really thought, like, being so into this stuff, I mean, like who, like, I don't know, like, who, I like, so enjoy, I always enjoyed, like, investigation, I've always enjoyed, like, journalism type stuff, you know, and before I knew that kind of stuff, you know, has been sort of taken over and propagandized, but, so, I mean, I had no idea that being like a true, but you know, I mean, it's like crazy that we're living in a world where they're actually like calling people truthers, like it's a disease, you know.
Well, what ought to be happening is that they ought to be teaching this stuff in school.
Exactly.
About oligarchy from day one. Okay, but the schools are named after the oligarchs. They control the education departments. They control the textbooks. So they control it all because they want to steer people away. They want to stay in the dark. That's why they call you a conspiracy theorist when you talk about them, because they're hidden. They own the media. They're hiding behind the media. Even Amy Goodman, you know, the great Amy Goodman, she doesn't talk about oligarchy in America that I know of. You know, maybe she talks about Russian oligarchs, you know, but here, no. But it's right in your face. There's a Princeton professor now that wrote a whole paper on it. You can't ignore it. And yet, does Rachel Maddow talk about oligarchs, American oligarchs on TV? Do they talk about it on Fox? They don't talk about it on the right. They don't talk about it on the left. They don't talk about it in the left, the alternative media. You know,
I do watch Democracy Now! And I make a mental note, like I'm always seeing if she's gonna have stories or talk about like the U.S. involvement in things, you know. And just today, I believe it was. In Bolivia, some president interview that it was just a couple of years old, who was saying how it was the U.S. that creates like these drug wars and funds the war on drugs to keep the war profiteering going, and I'm always sort of refreshed whenever I hear that on someone's show.
Well, she's allowed to talk about that stuff. See, there's safe topics, all right?
Right, like exactly, like where is the line drawn? Like that's what I'll
tell you where the line's drawn. I mean, first of all, they have to let her say some stuff, otherwise nobody would pay any attention. So Webster Tarpley calls it limited hangout. Okay.
Yeah.
You put out some damaging information to yourself, so that you gain people's trust. You know, like Ed Snowden, for instance. And Glenn Greenwald. Yeah, there's this big data dump and and all this great stuff. And Glenn Greenwald's telling us, I got information from Snowden could bring down the U.S. government. Well, last time I checked, the U.S. government's still doing fine, Glenn. You know, when are you going to start? So what happens is a lot of times through this data dump of Snowden comes stuff out that hurts the enemies of the oligarchy, you know? But anyway, back to your point. Yeah, Amy Goodman can talk about South American drug wars and stuff. You know, that's innocuous enough.
Yeah.
But you ever hear Amy Goodman talk about 9/11 truth?
No. Well, I know that last year, I believe it was last year, or was it the year before? I can't. I think it was last year that they actually went outside, the offices of Democracy Now! Protesting because she doesn't. Mention anything about 9/11, or at least questioning the official story. And Building 7 is a really good reason to question it.
And HR 14. But here's what Amy Goodman has to say about 9/11 truth.
Really?
That's it. She really doesn't go into it. She's paid some lip service to it. She's had so-called debates about it. Noam Chomsky, the great Noam Chomsky, he says, so what? So what if the government did it? Who cares? You know, big deal. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's hard to imagine, like Noam Chomsky saying something like that.
I'll go look up Noam Chomsky, see what he says about 9/11.
Chris Hedges doesn't really entertain 9/11 much
No,
either,
because a lot of these people are on the fringe. They're on the border between the mainstream and the alternative. All right? They sort of have a foot in one world and a foot in the other. You will be thrown out of the mainstream media. You'll be out of work as fast as it'll make your head spin.
Well, see, that's just it. It's like, you know, for some people, I kind of feel that living with one foot in one world, and you know, see, like that's kind of actually, I just said that to somebody about, like, you know, like my life. It's like, you know, having one foot in one world and one foot in the other world, but like for me, the gap in between my feet is so much wider than for someone like a Chris Hedges. It's like I can't live in, you know, like with one foot in one and one foot in the other, because you know, I mean, some people that, like, the gap I don't think is as wide because they're making a comfortable living the way that it is.
And a lot of them are making believe that this censorship doesn't exist. You know, they're trying to, instead of being honest and say, look, 9/11 stinks to high heaven, but the people who did it own the media that pays me, so I can't talk about it. Instead of being honest like that, it's conspiracy theory, this, that, and the other thing, and it's not, you know. But they're liars. They're intellectually dishonest at worst, and you know, intellectually not curious at best. But I find that even hard to believe.
So this is where, you know, I start to get like a little bit discouraged about, you know, change. It's like if people are really like not willing to be uncomfortable and to forego their kind of, you know, and I know it's hard, you know, for people that have children and all that, and I definitely won't judge them because I consciously chose not to bring kids into this world because I knew that you know, I needed to be like so focused on like activism and truth stuff, and I like to call it fitness. I mean, to me it's fitness. I don't think Americans are fit. I think if people were more fit mentally and physically, like, to me, right, like keeping in touch with your Congress people and just questioning things and challenging authority is a natural part of fitness that I don't know why people just don't automatically do it.
Well, you know, you mentioned children. People who do have children, and I don't have human children. I have dogs, right? But I have nieces and nephews, and you know, I certainly know good friends and family members who have kids, and I want to see us pass a good world on to the kids who are going to come after us. And you know, there's a couple of girls out there, I've never met them. They're 14 years old now. They turned 14 in August. And their dad was a guy I worked with at Cantor Fitzgerald. They were twins. They were born in August of 2001, probably about a month before their father died. I never met them, but I think we should focus on people like that. And are we really serving them by keeping our mouths shut and keeping them in the dark as well about the real world, the way the world really works? When's it going to happen to them? I feel like, you know, the oligarchy is really taking the gloves off these days.
Yeah.
It's the iron fist is coming out of the velvet glove, and you know, I think what they do is they wait. You know, my parents are gone now. Their parents were gone. These are the people who lived through the Great Depression. They told me about the Great Depression. You know, and now that they're gone, there's practically nobody left who lived through the Great Depression. So it's time to bring on the next one. A new generation of suckers is ready, right?
Yeah.
And I was surprised. I thought that we had learned enough and we got beyond it. But no, I see now it's just a cyclical reaping that they do. They grind down anybody who's getting ahead and push them back down again so that they don't have any financial competition. And that's what these kids are coming into. They're coming into the world. Even if they still buy the idea that, you know, a college education is going to help you out, they're coming out of college with $100,000, $200,000 worth of debt.
See, yeah, like, you know, we did speak yesterday, and, you know, I always talk about the family system, you know, because, right, like, it's like you're either passing down debt or you're passing down, you know, value and abundance. And, like, I just kind of feel like the line is getting blurred, like, really, really blurred as time goes on. To the point where like a family system just is not a family system anymore. It's like, you know, it's like it's crossed a line to where instead of, you know, passing down values, you know, family values, and you know, maybe like a family business or something, like people are just passing down debt, like just psychologically, financially, and environmentally.
Well, where does that come from? You know, here's the way the oligarchy is so successful because they're behind all of this stuff. And yet, we're all led to believe that this is the best there is. It doesn't get better than this. Our system is the greatest. It's the only. And, you know, once in a while it has a hard time, like it's having right now.
But what about...
And it's an accident, right? The best and the brightest are working away at this. They're trying to, you know, make things work, and the best they can do is to come up with this mess. But it's not, you know, again, back to what I said before, it's not, the economy's not broken.
I know.
For the people at the top. If the economy was really broken, Kat, it would be broken for everybody,
right,
and you would see it fixed.
Well,
okay,
that's
but
why...
it's not broken. This is the way they really want it, and they can't believe, they pinch themselves at how stupid we are because we accept it, and we act like there's nothing that can be done about it when there's plenty that can be done about it.
Right, and the people are not empowered. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's like people don't know their own rights. And, you know, like, again, like I go back to relationships, like I just look at it all as just like a microcosm of the macrocosm. Like if you were married to somebody who was just abusive and treating you like shit and disempowering you, I mean, would you just be like, oh, there's nothing I can do about it? You know, like I don't deserve any better. I mean, and another thing I look at, you know, because I feel like we've gotten incredibly, ridiculously, severely, dangerously disconnected from the natural world and how nature works. And to have the same people in power for as long as they have been just goes against the laws of nature, I feel like. And it's almost to the point where they're like the walking dead. It's like they're so sociopath. They're like... You know, it's like kind of being like embalmed. It's like they're almost like embalmed financially, like while they're still alive, like to keep themselves, you know, going.
Well, look, who would vote for this? You know, I think you're wrong. People are empowered, but they got to take self-responsibility and act on their empowerment.
Right.
Okay? Who would vote for this? Is supposed to be a democratic republic. All right? And what they do is they set up the professional wrestling, right and left, Coke and Pepsi, Democrat, Republican. And, you know, look, sometimes there's a big difference between the parties. During the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, when I grew up, there was a big difference between the political parties. Right now, there's no difference between the political parties. The right and the left, you know, the right wants to beat the slaves to death, and the left wants to give them a cup of water while they're being beat to death. You know, it's the same mess no matter who's in charge. And that's because the money, the oligarchs have got that under control. If people stood up, started voting, and stop eating out of the hand of the oligarchy, stop doing what they tell you to do. You can only participate in the system if you pick a side. And they have it fixed so the sides split 50-50, which means nothing's going to get done. You know, Alex Jones has an expression that's very pertinent right now in this point in the conversation. He says, A against B and the winner is C. And they're laughing all the way to the bank. Yeah. You know, they've got us all fighting with each other. I like Rachel Maddow. You like Fox or whatever, and they're all talking about the same stuff. None of them is really getting anything done. It's all secondary, tertiary issues. It's not the core issues that affect everybody. When are people going to put that junk away and say, look, we're Americans. We got to help each other out. If we got united about this, they wouldn't stand a chance.
And what I, because again, I just studied like so much psychology. I feel like what people do is, instead of taking the energy that they should be directing at the powers that be, they direct it at the innocent instead, and they condemn and criminalize the vulnerable, like like a bully would do. Instead of standing up to bullies, they just take it out on the vulnerable. So again, it's just like this transfer of like psychological debt and abuse down to those who could least afford it.
We've been led to believe that there are experts out there who are going to care for us, who are going to take care of us.
Yeah,
there's
but that
doctors, there's educators, there's politicians, there's security people, and all those people have failed us. They've all failed us. So we have to
Well, that's what I said about the family system a long time ago,
Yeah, but okay, so great. You wake up, you're in a mess. The people who are supposed to be serving you have failed you. What are you going to do about it? You're going to do what you do, Kat. You're going to do what I do. You're going to go out and you're going to pick yourself up and you're going to dust yourself off and you're going to start educating yourself. And I've been misled. I want to find out what the real story is. And you start to do the research and you have to go back and get that education that they didn't give you. And that's what I do on my show. I suspect you do something like that on yours. And more power to you, because you're doing it on the air so people can join in your journey of discovery. That's what I do. And I talk to people who focused on things and have really found the truth out about a lot of things that they don't want you to know.
There's a question being asked. Does your guest think that Americans could survive without a government? Probably not, because 50% of people are on government payroll or welfare.
I don't think it's like that. I think that if you have a group of people, you need to have some kind of organization. People want a choice, they want to be totally independent. It's a big country. If you can find some space to go live out totally all by yourself somewhere without depending on anybody else, that should be fine. But the moment you have to deal with other people and interact with them, if it's a small group, a family group, maybe you don't need any other outside rules, but at a certain point, you're going to have rules of conduct, and you're not allowed to barter using a scale that's dishonest. You know what I mean? That's a rule. That's a government. And, and this, if somebody used a scale that was dishonest, then nobody would barter with them like, the free market. No. People don't screw people out in the open. They do it on the sly, all right? So that's why scales have to be checked. It could be something that's less noticeable, but it's happening every time. For instance, and I could go on. If people want to live together, I think, Kat, it boils down to something much more basic, something spiritual even, okay?
Yeah.
It's community. Community. Yeah. The Dalai Lama teaches, and I agree with him, that the entire world is interdependent.
Right.
No one creature can live by itself. Exactly. We have bacteria in our gut by the billions, okay? Their DNA is totally different than ours. They're alien creatures that have been inside of us almost since birth. We can't live without them. And they can't live without us.
Right.
And what do? We kill them with antibiotics. And preservatives and enzymes, it's a totally interdependent world.
I wanted to bring up, because the line of discussion that we've been having kind of brings me to think of Edward Bernays.
Uh-huh.
And how he was really a really huge part of brainwashing the masses, turning them into consumers, and that whole, like he was just working for all these companies to.
He taught governments, companies how to screw people, how to get people to act against their own interests. He's responsible for all the dead women who've died of smoking cigarettes. lung cancer. He got women to smoke.
Right, right. Yeah, that I know. He made it, sound. And well, Aaron Russo in Freedom to Fascism said the same thing about women's lib.
Right.
He said that, I don't know, David Rockefeller or whoever, like he became friends with, was telling them that the Rockefeller Foundation, funded Ms. Magazine and Women's Lib.
Right.
So to get women out of the house and out to work so that they could, tax, because they couldn't tax half the population.
Oligarchs have been behind that kind of thing for a really long time. Okay, they're interested in control. They're interested in managing the population, which they see as their sort of stock, their livestock, right?
Yeah.
As a resource, human resources.
Yeah.
And they don't want to have too many idle people on their hands. We may wake up and decide to improve ourselves, which would mean that the minute the masses get improved, they go down. All right. By the way, you ever notice that all these people who complain about the redistribution of wealth, all these jackasses that cry every time you bring up the concept redistribution of wealth, what are you against rich people? Redistribution of wealth is fine when it's going from the bottom to the top. Nobody ever says anything about that. They only complain when it goes from the top down.
Right.
There are 80 families in the world that own half the world's wealth. And these idiots are walking around talking about sustainability? Are you kidding me? How can you talk about sustainability? What would the world be like if they only had 25% of the world's wealth? Would we even be having a discussion about sustainability? And of course, renewables and all that sort of thing, but they don't want that because they're invested in this tragic way that we do things. We can do things much, much better. But in any case, they use people like Bernays. They determine family unit is something they don't want, they don't like. Yeah. It supports people, it supports humanity. When they take the velvet glove off the iron fist and they start rounding people up, the family unit is your last refuge. You ought to be able to depend on your brother and sister to hide you in their basement, right?
Exactly, and exactly.
But they atomize people. They don't want people to feel that way. They don't want people to trust anybody. They want people to be moving around all the time and not know who the neighbors are and all of that kind of thing.
And it's like the people don't see it. Like that's what I just don't understand. It's like.
It's very, very cleverly disguised. Women's lib that you talked about.
How do you not see that? Because I hear a lot of people talk about like their family is like the greatest source of a lot of their stress and I don't know, torment. They don't know nothing, as we say here in Brooklyn, about torment. Okay, where do you see how it's going to get? It was really bad back in the day when kids died, really young and that sort of thing, infant mortality and all the rest. They're trying to push us back to that, but Aaron Russo, he was on INN when that film of his came out, that great film of his came out. He talked about this, and the oligarchs eugenicists. They don't want people. They're Malthusians. They want to get rid of people. They get behind Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood and birth control and eugenics. Abortions and so forth. Tell me, Kat. You're a woman. Can you tell me a more important job on earth than bringing in healthy, well-adjusted, new human beings into the society? I cannot imagine a single job more important than that. Right. And women have been made to think that it's a piece of junk, that job. You're better off, working on the subway or wherever, in a bank or whatever. That if you ask me, women ought to be able to be paid full time for that. That's a huge investment in our society. Being a parent, you're talking about.
Why not? Why not?
Well, no. I mean, I kind of believe in the traditional sort of at least one parent, whether it's even the male, the father or the mother staying home, because to me, like exactly the breakdown of the family and having two people being forced to work. There's no, again, it pushes nature to its limit because it's just something that, children are not made for that. You know, there's just like we're just completely pushing nature to its absolute brink, and human beings, and piling so much stress and passing and invading, this current system into the future, and stunting the development, the proper organic, development of
They're
children.
against nature.
Yeah.
They want to control nature. They're foolish. They don't believe in interdependence. They think they can be by themselves. They think they can conquer nature.
Yeah,
nature,
so that has
nature cannot be conquered. And it's still not nice to fool Mother Nature. And let me tell you, I'm listening to you. I grew up with my mother at home. And I turn around, I look back on how I grew up in the 50s and the 60s. Unfortunately, compared to what I see today, it was a luxury. It was not a luxury in those days. It was normal.
Right.
And I'll have you know, my mother was no, Loretta Lynn's stay-at-home mom baking cookies, Hillary Clinton got excoriated for saying she was not like. My mother was an educated woman. She was a registered nurse, and she had worked for years with Pan American Airways in a very glamorous job, flying to South America, to Buenos Aires and Havana, Cuba, and Rio de Janeiro. She spoke Spanish, she spoke Italian,
Wow.
She spoke French, she spoke a little bit of Portuguese, and of course she spoke English. And she gave all that up to raise my brothers and sisters, okay? And so she wasn't somebody who coulda, shoulda, woulda had some kind of glamorous career. She dropped all of that to gladly have children. And I cannot thank her and my father. And my father worked his butt off to have 6 kids, all right? I'm the oldest. So I've seen it, I've been there, done that, and it is a terrible shame that the children today are being denied that sort of security and freedom to be kids and grow up. And we did not have Miley Cyrus stripping in front of everybody on TV after we followed her on Disney. None of that stuff driving kids crazy. It's terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah, I think we're really doing, children and future generations an incredible. It should be criminal. It should be, and it is criminal, but that's just it. It's like when it's being encouraged and there's no resistance, and nature is doing its best to give us the sign, like, you're destroying me, with the BP oil spill, and all this fracking stuff, and so human beings too, like, there's signs and symptoms from human beings, when their bodies and their psyches and their spirits are just, being pushed to the limit. Like, the torture just comes to my mind right now.
Well, I hate to leave on a tortured note, because I really enjoyed being on your show, and I'd love to be on again. But I got to do my show in a few more minutes, and it's about 2 more minutes now. So I have to jump off to do INN World Report Radio, Kat.
Okay.
There's a lot more to talk about. Maybe we can continue this conversation another time.
Yeah, come back again. Tom Kiely of INN World Report.
Well, thank you very much, Kat, and thank you so much for serving people by doing what you're doing.
Yes, did you hear that, folks? Please go to Democracy Chronicles, and we definitely need your donations so that we can keep this kind of news going.
And anybody, by the way, that's listening, if you'd like to contact me, it's very simple. Send me an email, info@innradio.com, info@innradio.com, and I'll be happy to correspond with you. I can get you links to my show, and we'll have Kat on my show before too long.
Yeah,
How's that, Kat?
That'd be awesome.
Very good. Thanks a lot. I got to jump. My show starts at 7 o'clock.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Tom Kiely.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Okay, so before I forget, yes, we do need donations to keep alternative media going. My Indiegogo is posted on Democracy Chronicles. It's also posted on my Facebook, Cat Waters on Facebook, Cat Waters with 2 T's. 2 T's in the waters, not the cat. Because without funding, we're getting to a point where everything is backwards, and the people that get the funding, the people that you get the funding from, you're not allowed to say certain things, and you're not allowed to go too far because the funding gets pulled. So, but and then the people like me who go far, and are willing to talk about certain things, we don't get the funding because the people that, I don't know, have the money don't want you to say those things. So that's why we need to be and support this kind of media to help be able to talk about things like HR 14 and releasing the 28 pages. So and I was just informed in an email that the next guest, Sandra Hicks, unfortunately is not able to make it. I actually just saw the email that he just sent, and so I'm going to play the pre-recorded interview with Professor Graham McQueen that we had a little bit of distortions with last week, and they cleaned up the audio, and so I'm going to play some of that, and I also wanted to play maybe some of John Perkins' talk at HR 14 on Saturday. So please don't go away.
Welcome to Organic News with Cat Waters.